Welcome back, everybody, after our spring break. And I also took my break over the past week, and I apologize. I'm a little bit behind getting all this information out to you. But here goes. Week 11, beginning Module 4, and really starting to talk about the vetting of your ideas as we move towards the end of the semester. We're taking a look at here the assignment, which is the midterm assignment. It is not due until April 3rd. And so all of this will be in your module as well as on Canvas. But what we're taking a look at right now is a Wordle that was put together that represents the ranking system that all of you had for our 6 rating systems that we have been exploring. As you can see, ethical redevelopment and lead neighborhood development really stand out. And then living, building, challenge, seed, well building, and then sites at the end. So this is good. I really enjoyed talking with everybody. I have a very good understanding, I think, of where each of you are coming from. What you don't know is where your fellow classmates are in this. And although we see this kind of a ranking here of these 2 items in top, what you'll notice is that some of you really rank ethical redevelopment up there on top, others lead and D. So again, this is a composite based on that weighting system. So this should be interesting. And I'm kind of looking forward what we're going to be doing next then for your midterm. And again, this is written up as your assignment, but you will be putting together a 3-minute video that is a pitch to your fellow 100 plus change teammates, i.e. your class members, on your philosophy, your strategy, your big idea around community engaged design. So the remainder of this assignment talks about what that video character ought to be. I've included the 5 rules around TED Talks. Keep this compelling and powerful. Include you. You have to be part of this video. You have to talk to the camera. We have to see you and hear you. We can't just do a voiceover. And remember that this video is about you and your philosophy and the strength of how you present both. Really quick looking at this, keep it simple, keep it clear, be original, both in the, not only just in the idea, but how you present it, be relevant, and make it enjoyable. What are we gonna do with these? We will, once you have uploaded those to Canvas, I will create then about a 40-minute video that includes all of you. And then you guys will be reviewing that video and looking at where are there points of commonality. I think it would be great if we could create some teams moving forward on this next part. I think you would enjoy it. It would be less work for everybody if you're working in teams, although I know some of you think that teams are actually more work than doing it by yourself, and that, of course, is your discretion. So anyway, that is, here's our rubric. That will be your assignment. And I'm going to pause this as we move to our next. So we're looking at the mind map now, talking a little bit about where we are. We finished our module, developing our personal philosophy. Our last piece to that is your video, which you are going to be working on. So now we're going to start to take a look a little bit at our module 4 and what that is including. So we're going to just close these. We have 3 weeks in this module. Make this a little bit bigger so we can all see it better. We have week 11, and it's mad at me right now. And that is sort of vetting our design tenets for community engaged design part 1. During this week, we're going to be having our first overview of Philadelphia, and talking about why Philadelphia as a city is so interesting, to be able to be sort of looking at as our place to really test and vet these ideas. Week 11 will be, week 12 will be doing a deeper dive into the community. Week 3 then will be adaptive strategies for 100 plus change. So this week, we're going to talk about Philadelphia. We're going to talk about sort of the state of the city, talk a little bit about the Philadelphia Water Department's Green City Clean Water. When it comes to infrastructure and innovation, Philadelphia ranks top in terms of having a federally mandated, or a approved, EPA approved court order around this issue. We'll talk about it. Talk a little bit about the history of the city as well. Week 12, then we will start to get into our Old Kensington community, talk a little bit about mapping that community, what that will look like. We will review our midterm reviews and then see about possible team selection. And then week 13, everyone will be looking at your presentations. We're going to have some online discussions, pitching our ideas to each other, really thinking about those, and then also taking a look at the overview of finalists, who made it, who didn't, in 100 plus change. And really, this is helping you develop that larger adaptive strategy so that we will then be able to move into module 5. And that will basically be week 16 and 15 and 14 of really refining your ideas, getting now into the specificity of the Old Kensington community in your area, and really developing your design ideas. And then week 6, module 6, which is hiding up here, way up here, because of the way this crazy thing works. Module 6 is your final pitch, and that will be a combination of a presentation and supporting material, similar to what 100 and change does for that. So that's where we are with that, and now we'll get into our lecture. We are back talking about week 4, Philadelphia. Housekeeping. One thing that we've gone over our mind map. I will give all of you an opportunity if you want. I have developed a Facebook page where I, over the last 2 years, have shared that with my students. It is where I put Facebook information that I see and hear from the community and from people. One thing about community engaged design, it's not all neatly tied up in a little bow in a research report. A lot of it is what's out there. It's self-organized material. It's people talking about things. It's people angry. It's people happy. It's people sad. So I would encourage all of you to do that. I will send out an announcement if you are interested and you have a Facebook page. This is a private Facebook page, which means that nobody can see what we post or what we share. It is strictly between us and the other former students that are part of it. Not everybody does it, but the students who have done it have really enjoyed that a lot. So I will send that out to all of you and encourage you to do that. We've talked about our course recap, where we are. Midterms, we talked about that. April 3rd, those are due. So today, there's a couple things. One, I've got 3 videos for you to watch. One is a Bruce Springsteen video that I think captures a lot about the essence of Philly. It is 10 years old. It is actually filmed in the area where we're going to be working. And although it's 10 years old, not a whole lot has changed. There's not as much trash and there's a little bit more development, but the people and places are still very much the ethos of that community. The third one is a video that was put together for Old City. And because it was the original capital of the city, it's where the founding fathers created the Declaration of Independence. It's important for you to see that sort of dichotomy of what's going on. So I think you'll find those 3 enjoyable videos. Work on your midterm video this week. There are some suggested readings, but I'd really rather you enjoy the videos, focus on your midterm videos, and then we will do our next dive. So in your reading, it says required, but ignore that. The Green Cities, Clean Waters, more information on that. The public school system, how to destroy a public school system is an interesting one. And then there's some other things related to stormwater, and then the Philadelphia, the Pew Charitable Trust State of the City, which a good portion of this lecture comes from that material. So most of you remember this, maybe you don't, but this is that graph that I showed you back when we were talking about the nature of cities. We bring it back because we're talking about Philadelphia. And Philadelphia was, at one point, in the beginning of the development or the origins of this country, it was the most populous city at that time. It has since plateaued and gone through a series of dives deep, deep down, and it is now on a resurgence. And I think what's interesting is, and we'll go through some of these stats, but the city's population has risen for 9 consecutive years. This past year, it's up another 5,800. This increase since 2006 stands at 78,000 for an increase, which is a stark reversal after a decrease of nearly 600,000 people, over the past 70 or 80 years. So it is great to see this kind of thing. And we're going to go through some of the key findings. One is age. Another is demographics, diversity. And another one is the idea of walkability and transit, which is another reason why I really do enjoy Philadelphia. So where is Philly? Philly is in this lowermost corner of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania lies between the Great Lakes and the Atlantic coast. New York City, let's go ahead and annotate this guy here. Wow, the line. New York City, oh my God. Sorry about that. New York City, sitting right in here. So you can see very close to Philadelphia. This is the Delaware drainage basin. This is the Chesapeake Bay. This is where it's significant for those of you who like oysters. That's where a lot of them are coming from. So as you can see, it really lies within an interesting area within the Northeast region. Along here and down are the Appalachian Mountains. So it really does set in a basin, individual and set apart by itself. So historically, this is a map of Philadelphia back 1794 in its origins. The city, based on city planning, had a couple things. One, William Penn, who founded Philadelphia, did it based on a city grid. This is our main center grid in City Hall, which still exists. It then had a series of parks that were laid out as in squares that were out here on either side. It is bounded on one side by the Delaware River, which is the major shipping port and then on the other is the Schuylkill Expressway along here. Today, Philadelphia is a much larger city. This square right here is the square that we were just looking at historically. Here is the Delaware River. Here is the Schuylkill River. This still remains sort of what everyone is commonly refers to as Center City. But as you can see, the boundaries of Philadelphia have expanded substantially. It is comprised of a series of different drainage basins, which will be important as we start to get into sustainability and city infrastructure. So, every year, the Pew Charitable Trust, which originated in Philadelphia, has since moved on and is a national nonprofit. But it has tracked key sort of components about the city. So this is a good graph just to show you what we were talking about, that low point in the population, which was its lowest point in a century, which is kind of hard to believe. And then it has since climbed up. An important component here is that Philadelphia is a city that is based on and it has an infrastructure based on a population of 2 million people. It lost that 600,000 that we talked about, that population it lost. It still has an aging infrastructure for 2 million people. So the goal is to get back as quick as possible to 2 million so that we can support that infrastructure and have the tax base that it needs. So what does that mean in terms of other elements? No, you can't see these things, but they're in my way. So a couple things. This is a combination of both the 2016 Pew report, but for some reason they decided to not go over some things which I think are important, so I pulled some of this data from 2015. This one I think is important because for a city of its size, it ranks 2, 4, 6. It is 8th in its median household income. And so not only did it lose 600,000 people in its population, it lost a significant number of people who were middle to upper income families. And so it really does suffer from high unemployment and very high poverty rates with relatively low numbers of high-paying jobs. But things are changing in Philadelphia, which I think is another reason why it makes it a great place to test some of your ideas because it, one, is an aging city. It has issues that are chronic throughout our major cities, particularly in the Northeast in the United States. It also has issues that are chronic that we're starting to see globally, and we can talk a little bit about that. Crumbling infrastructure, high poverty levels, and increases in population would be sort of the key ones. But between 2005 and 14, this was the age profile. You can see that youth is up there, fairly consistent, though really, when you look at it across youth all the way until you get into the 50s, and then you start to see a sharp decline. Interestingly, though, if we take a look now at 2015, we see these huge spikes. So these spikes are the fact that Philadelphia is now recorded as one of the largest percentage increases of millennials of any major city in the country, even more, believe it or not, than Denver, Colorado. And so this, from between 2005 and 2014, the number of residents in ages 20 to 34 grew by more than 120,000. It is clearly what is driving the population increase in Philadelphia and really allowing it to really come back in to its own, which is fantastic. This is great news. Unemployment, interesting. So we are ranking 8th in poverty in we are ranking 8th in household income, and yet we're only at 4th in unemployment. So what that's telling us is people have, there are jobs, but they are extremely low-paying jobs, and we'll get into a little bit more about what that means and what's going on there. So Philadelphia ranks 4th in unemployment, below Detroit, Baltimore, and Washington, and pretty close to Cleveland, Chicago. So the poverty rate, though, here, we are the 3rd highest with a poverty rate of 26%. Only, just directly below Detroit and Cleveland, which again is really interesting because you think about Detroit, who had an unemployment rate of 12%. We were at 7%, and yet their poverty rate's at 39, and we're at 26. So clearly, there are some huge disconnects for Philadelphia in terms of what could be going on that's not. Homicides, crime in our older cities. I think this is an interesting one to be able to take a look at because since 2006, since we've started to see this spike and this increase in population, homicides and murder rates are going down. We have seen a spike, and we'll talk about this briefly, between 2014 and then 2015. 2015 it was a tough year. It was a tough year for a lot of people and a lot of things. Look at, if you look at this, the dark green represents 2014, the light green represents 2015. Look at Baltimore. This is when we had this incredible issues around police brutality, police shootings, resistance, anger, frustration, high levels of incarceration really bubbling up to the surface within the United States. Baltimore clearly getting the brunt of that. Philadelphia, not seeing that so much. Philadelphia, although we did see that slight spike, Philadelphia has tried very hard to have police on horseback, police on foot, to really try to ease some of these issues around conflicts between police, conflicts between individuals. But still, it is ranking up there in terms of its homicide rate. It's still it's 6th in the country for that. So violent crimes, this is a really interesting map for a couple reasons. One, I'll sort of show you, this is the neighborhood right in here that we're going to be focusing in on. It is North Philadelphia East or Old Kensington. It is an area of old industrial, has seen a huge decline, is starting to see an increase in millennials. If you remember our map from before, that was showing us the old city back when the country was founded. That little center city zone is this pocket right here. It's almost that exact square. Right there is the Schuylkill River. Right there is the Delaware River. So this is that little rectangle that we were looking at before, and clearly it is low crime, high income, and then the areas to the north then are these other areas where we start to get into other levels of poverty and levels of crime. But there's a couple of things that are interesting with Philadelphia. I think most of you can remember that during our discussion about the nature of cities, we talked about the plot against transit, the buying of streetcars and rail and streetcar lines by automobile companies, the devastation of the rail systems, the Pennsylvania Railroad, the Reading Railroad, the creation of Amtrak as the rail system failed. So a couple things to remember is here, again, this is 2013 statistics. I don't have 2015, but we rank 4th in the use of mass transit. So the things that Philadelphia has, it still has it still has a trolley car, streetcar system. It still has private SEPTA, which is the transit system for Pennsylvania, Southeastern Public Transportation System. It still has commuter trains. It has a very expansive commuter train system. It still has connections to Amtrak. And then it has a bus system. So it is it's an easy place to get around, even if they still use little tokens and they're not as advanced as New York City. So it is up there in terms of the percentage of people that use that system. So as we start to look at this idea of community engaged design and this idea of multimodal systems, the neighborhood you're going to be working on is just like it's everywhere, all around it. And so I think it really will be an excellent example of what we're talking about trying to do for that kind of sustainability aspect. Another thing that is really interesting is that from 2000 to 2013, there has been almost a 4-fold increase in bikes and the use of bikes. It does have a bike system. It does have a bike rental system as well that is expanding rapidly from year to year. So that would be another thing that I think really makes Philadelphia a desirable place to try to take a look at. Here's another dichotomy, and I think, when we go back and we think about that, why is it ranked so high with this poverty level? Why is it pretty high in unemployment, but there's a contradiction between those two? When we look at the percent of residents who are college graduates, we rank way down there. So, this is, 26 as opposed to a region as a whole that is 35%. And that's pretty low. It's really low when we look at this next slide that shows Philadelphia ranking 7th in the country for the number of universities it has and the number of top universities that are available for individuals. So clearly, there is this lag between this blossoming educational opportunities at the college level, a dysfunctional K-12 education system that has been being tried, that the states under a Republican-led government over the last 8 years has tried to break the back of the teachers union, and basically try to remove it and replace it with a charter system. So these are some really interesting things that do affect communities and their ability to function. So the last piece of this that we're going to go over is an important infrastructure component. For the most part, we've talked about sustainability lead, we've talked about people, we've talked about creative placemaking, but this is one thing that also sets Philadelphia apart that I think makes it a great opportunity as we look at opportunities in community engaged design, particularly when we think about the multifaceted nature of what community engaged design needs to be. It cannot be one thing. It cannot be one goal with one solution. It has to be adaptive. It has to apply to multiple things. There have to be multiple benefits at multiple levels. And how do you do that? And so we're going to talk a little bit about this just as an overview to ground you guys. But Philadelphia, as it says here, in 2011, began its $2 billion 25-year Green City Clean Waters program. This program, as it says, it was the first city to receive approval from the Environmental Protection Agency to implement this type of program. Currently, there are 45 cities that are being sued by the EPA for stormwater and sanitary sewer pollution based on combined storm and sanitary overflow systems. And we'll talk briefly about what that means. And in a nutshell, the EPA stipulation here is that they need to green 10,000 acres in 25 years, which means instead of coming up with a gray water system, instead of building like the big tunnel that Chicago tried to do, and that was a bust, instead of trying to create an engineered gray water system to manage stormwater, they're going green. So this becomes just an amazing opportunity for us to really talk about what that means with our community engaged design. So this is a quickie urban stormwater 101. And you guys may know about this, you may not. I sense maybe not. So we're just going to do this as an overview. This PowerPoint will be in Canvas. But essentially with urban stormwater, we have two things: the quality of that water and the quantity of that water. Again, as we create globally a shift from rural to urban populations, this becomes increasingly more important. I'm actually talking in Berlin next fall to talk about how schoolyards and urban stormwater and how designers need to be much more advocates for this and really address it. On the quantity, there's stream stability in terms of the velocity of the water that comes in and the duration. There's also the idea of volume control. How do you control this water as it increases? And we'll talk about that increase as things become more paved and more impervious. There's the quality of it, which is, how do you treat on-site stormwater? How do you come up with porous pavement ideas or green roofs or stormwater gardens that take that urban stormwater and clean it before it enters our streams, where fish are and where other living systems are and where our water comes from? There's this idea of a consolidated treatment that looks at the idea of wetlands and ponds and porous landscape detention areas. So it really is about this idea of quality and quantity and quality. And those are the things that you'll be thinking about as you look at your community engaged design, because these are community issues. They're not just site specific. So stormwater 101. In our natural environment, it rains. We have ecosystems, and we have evapotranspiration. Water infiltrates into the ground, the soils and the roots, remove pollutants, recharge groundwater, and restore the stream-based flow. And trees help with evapotranspiration. In impervious situations, in places where our cities paved more and more, either with hardscapes or with roof covers, that rainfall no longer gets into the ground, so infiltration's lost, groundwater declines, and our runoff then starts to flush those pollutants that it experiences directly into our streams. So we have erosion, we have bad water quality, we have habitat loss. It's a mess. And so this is just that great sort of bell curve that talks about two things. One, with every storm, we have this bell curve. And this bell curve, what it talks about is there is this point right here where we have this peak volume of water. And when we have a vegetative system, like we have down here, that vegetation allows that, it controls that peak flow and controls that flooding. So that you don't have, I mean, look at this. This is every major flooding storm event that you see. It's all this water right here that used to not happen. This peak volume of water didn't happen because the vegetation controlled it, slowed it, released it over a slower portion of time, allowed a bunch of that water to go into the ground. When that's gone, we have these monster peaks. We have these micro bursts of flooding that start to happen and occur that cause just amazing amount of damage. And so that's what we're kind of looking at here, is that really crazy bell curve. And what we're really trying to do is control that bell curve and really try to figure out what we can do. Ideally, we want to try to keep all of our stormwater down here in this 5 to 10 year storm event. We don't want to get into this 110 year event where this kind of flooding, or this huge 100-year events where it exceeds those capacities. So the more we can create and work at these different levels, the better off we're going to be. So Philadelphia. Philadelphia, like a lot of our older cities in Philadelphia, in the United States, and older sisters cities in Europe and all over the globe, has what is called a combined storm sewer system. For Philadelphia, this covers almost 2/3 of its total sewer service area. And again, by combined, we mean the combination of stormwater and sanitary and effluent. So here is the classic Philadelphia row house. In Philadelphia, there's 164 combined sewer outfalls, which we call CSOs. And these are discharged into those two major rivers. Remember that we saw the Delaware and the Schuylkill. And so here in this diagram, the yellow dashed line is our sanitary sewer: toilets, sinks, showers. It typically goes into the wastewater system. But unfortunately, in Philadelphia, we have our stormwater from our streets, alleys, and roofs also go into that sewer system. And so during storms, and as we increase the impervious surface, more and more of the stormwater goes into this storm system. What happens then is this storm system, this sanitary sewer, can no longer have all of this go into the treatment facility. And so then what it does, it overflows into the rivers. And so we've got the system of pipes bringing sewer, this effluent, down to this treatment facility, right? During a storm, those pipes can't do that anymore. And so what's happening is, instead of the water going here, it's now going out here, out here, out here, and out here. Untreated effluent, untreated raw sewage is going into these rivers on either side. So this is a plan that shows you, remember our boundary, this is our outline of Philadelphia. The area in here with all these little green guys, this sort of tan boundary, this is the boundary for the combined sanitary overflow system. Our site sits, so there's the Schuylkill, there's the Delaware, right there, right? Our site sits right there. And our site in case you haven't realized it, flows right into the Delaware River. So these are really part of the city's analysis, looking at street rankings, looking at potential for street stormwater street scenarios, looking for vacant parcels near the street, looking at the presence or on or off street parking, looking at the presence of trees, looking at soils infiltration capacity, looking at maintenance and concurrent projects. So it really is very exciting to see the stuff that we're starting to look at with them. This is their prioritization score, where they've really been trying to look at, for the water department itself, where does it really want to zoom in and where does it want to focus? But you can see in our little area here, it looks like we do have some red zones, and so that will be good. Couple quick pictures. What does this mean? Here are some good examples of on-site street storm water, where our storm water during these high flows are not going into the storm system. They're actually going into these tree wells. So during a storm, this water is coming in, and again, we're creating these mini little rain gardens that are doing what the green system can do. The plants are absorbing the water. The water is then infiltrating down into the groundwater. It's not going into our main system. So goals, this is more on green schools. Not going to really go into that. I like this. I thought this was a great, although this is for a new high school that was built, but it shows a little bit that strategy of capturing on-site impervious. This is impervious parking and other impervious areas, capturing all of that storm water and directing it into our our stormwater garden to be able to, again, keep it out of that master system. So with that, that concludes my discussion for you this week. Next week, we will take a deeper dive into our community and our 5-block zone that we'll be looking at in Old Kensington. Good luck working on your videos. Can't wait to see them. And in the process, I am going to busily start preparing stuff about our site. I will try to get those up sooner rather than later. So if some of you want to get into that this week, I'll try to get that out for you as well. So with that, thank you, everybody. And I will see you next week.